Well, hey, happy Thursday, everyone. Technically, I thought yesterday was Thursday, so today should be Friday. So I'm all kinds of thrown off. But as far as I know, today's Thursday, and this is So What, the Marketing Analytics and Insights live show, joined by Chris and John. This week, we are talking about analyzing your email marketing performance. We love talking about email. Chris has an extensive background in email marketing. I believe it's maybe your favorite marketing channel if I could say so. And email is one of those channels we talk about a lot because it's one of the channels that you wholeheartedly own as a marketer. You have control over it. You can do what you want with it. And so today we are talking about email KPIs to measure, which metrics don't matter. We're talking about measures. What measures are endangered by upcoming privacy changes? This is a big deal. And then how to analyze your email list performance to understand your audience better. And I'll just sort of make the broad statement that email marketing is a complex thing. There's a lot that goes into it, but I think we're specifically focusing on measurement today. So, Chris, John, email marketing performance.
It is indeed. A couple of warnings up front. With email marketing, a lot of the decisions people try to make are contingent upon what you do. So if you're trying to figure out like what the best day to send email is, and you send your emails on Tuesdays, and you look at your data, Tuesday will always be the best day to send email because there's a bias in the data. So just be aware of that anytime you work with email data, and frankly, any marketing data, there is always that danger that your activities do distort what's going on. Now, I want to start today by talking about analyzing the data in email marketing to try and get some understanding about its effectiveness, its impact and stuff. But one of the prerequisites that you'll probably want to have is access to either really good data exports from email marketing software or the underlying database itself. So here at Trust Insights, for example, we use an open source package called Mautic. It is a marketing automation software that we actually run the server that this thing runs on. And so for us to get the raw data, literally just log into the server and do a bunch of things. Now, really good providers like Salesforce Marketing Cloud, like HubSpot, and other top tier vendors will give you an API to your data, or actually just let you access the database itself. Lower tier providers typically they don't necessarily let you have as much access. So some of the things that we'll talk about today apply to everyone. Some of the things apply to people who can get at the raw data itself.
Well, it sounds like when you're evaluating provider, at the very least, there should be an option to export some of the data into a CSV file.
Ideally, I mean that's true of all marketing technology. If there isn't an export to the CSV button, they want to keep your data and your money. So maybe not choose them. So let's start off first. Katie, what do you really want to know as a senior executive? What do you really want to know about email marketing?
I want to know a couple of things. What I really want to know is, is our email newsletter any good? And so I'll bet, that's a statement that's been said to marketers. And then as a marketer, you're like, well, what does that mean? Does it mean number of opens? Does it mean subscribers? Does it mean engagement? And I want to know all of it. But if I really had to prioritize, I want to know, I guess, first and foremost, the engagement rate. And so to me, that is the number of people who not only got it, but the number of people who did something with it, who interacted with it. And then I also want to know, like, does it lead us to get any leads in the pipeline?
That latter part typically is the part where I think a lot of people who are focused on email marketing forget about, because we get focused on all the buttons in our software, and we're like, but what does this actually do? So number one thing for everybody to do, go into your Google Analytics account, right? And let's go to audience here. And if you don't already have a segment set up for email marketing, let's create one. So let's create a new segment. And we're going to do conditions. And I want to look at a source or medium that contains things like a Actually, let's do a regular expression. I'm going to do mail, right? And email and Gmail and Hotmail and so on and so forth. We're trying to just get at what traffic is identified this. Or we also want to do the same thing for campaigns. So if we've got campaign data, I'm going to copy that exact same thing, because sometimes come in as like SFMC as a source, and it may or may not have email. So I'll just call this email marketing. And hit save. And this is basic performance metric number 1. Is your email marketing efforts sending anybody to your website? Like, forget about everything else. If you can't even get people to your website from your email newsletter or your email marketing efforts, it's probably not working, right? So if we look at, let's go back to, say, January 1. Look at the year to date so far. It's been an interesting year. And let's look at monthly. And so we can see that, yeah, email marketing is sending people to our website. So this is a pretty good thing. I would say that, at least in terms of effectiveness, it's up there. Let's add in organic search just as a side by side. And there's our organic search. Interestingly, for us at least, as of sort of the middle of the year, email has sort of displaced search as a traffic driver. So for us, it's really important, right? So as an executive, you can now look at this and go, we're doing good with email, but we probably want to talk about our SEO on a different show.
Well, but when I look at this, it makes sense, because I know I have that insider knowledge of what we focus on at Trust Insights. And, it's no big secret that, we're a small company, and email is our consistently focused on marketing channel. So I would be surprised if email wasn't the top driver of traffic, because it is the one thing we consistently do week over week over week and work to improve upon. Whereas, yeah, we do snooze a little bit on the other channels.
Yep. So that's metric number 1. That's what I would say. That's KPI number 1. If your email marketing can't even send people to your website, don't worry about open rate and click rate. You've got a pretty serious problem. Metric number 2, Katie, is exactly what you said, which is it actually doing anything for us? So I'm going to go to conversions, go to assisted conversions, crank up the look back window to 90 days, get us the biggest possible view. And then I'm just going to look down here. I'm going to switch this default channel grouping and look at the channels by assisted conversions or by last touch conversions, just to get a sense of what order are the channels in. Hey, email is our top converting channel, both in assists and in last touches. So this is a channel that's really, really working for us. If we want to get really fancy and you have Google Analytics set up, Google Analytics 4 set up, I should say, let's go to our advertising section, which is poorly named, and go to our model comparison. Am I in the right spot? Now I need to go to conversion paths. I'm going to go to time decay, which is the model we like. And now I can see at the beginning of the funnel, the middle of the funnel, and at the end of the funnel, email all the way through is what's moving people through. So this would be my second KPI, is how much is email driving conversions, and then where in the funnel is it?
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. And so, and this is a little bit of a side note. So for us, email is the channel that we focus on the most, which also makes it the most vulnerable if something changes, if we, suddenly become unable to provide our email newsletter week over week, or if something changes with the server or whatever the thing might be. So while it's great that it's working, it's not great that we're so over indexed on email. And that's, the biggest takeaway from this is like, yay, email's working. Oh crap, it's super vulnerable.
It is. If we go to an even more advanced attribution model, we can see just how much. So this is the attribution model that we build with our own software. And we can see here that email marketing represents 70% of our conversions.
Mm-hmm. which is great because it's the channel we have the most control over, but also terrifying if, I don't know, Chris, I mean, I love to use this example. Let's say you decide to go off to the middle of nowhere and churn butter forever and you go off the grid. Bye bye email newsletter.
There's definitely risk with that. The one thing though is it is a lot better than we ran a similar report for the Marketing Over Coffee list, and I saw it was 60% organic Google, and so I'm beholden to Mountain View, which is even less control. There's a lot more chance of taking a beating from that at least. So at least it's in relative terms, it's better to have all the eggs in that basket.
Exactly. Sure. So one of the reasons that we started the show talking about why you probably want to have access to the underlying data is that a lot of email software out there doesn't have the best UI for doing analysis, because it's really the tools are focused on sending email. They're not focused on business intelligence. And so doing an analysis of your email marketing can be a little bit tricky. So one of the things I would suggest doing is, like Katie said at the beginning of the show, make sure that there's a CSV export button like everywhere, or just a massive push this button to dump your data out. So I'm going to switch over here to Tableau software. I've taken exactly what was on that screen that we just saw and just brought it into Tableau. So I'm going to bring up our emails by subject. We're going to look at the number of times that each email has been read. And then the number of times each email has gotten a click on it. And we can see sort of the individual subject lines that are in here. Now, one of the things that people do the most wrong when it comes to analyzing email is they immediately go in and say, okay, well, it's clearly got to be, the creative, like our layout's terrible, or it's not attractive, our calls to action, the button wasn't big enough, or the logo wasn't big enough. And it's actually most of the time the reverse. The problem, there's a framework Bob Stone coined in 1968 called the Direct Marketing Framework, which applies really well to email. He said, there's three things in order that matter for direct marketing: list, offer, creative. Have you got the right people? Have you got the right offer for them? And then is the creative good? And you do it in that order, because if you got the wrong crowd, it doesn't matter what you send them, they ain't going to buy anything, right? If you got the wrong offer, right crowd, but the wrong offer, they're still not going to buy anything. And then, everyone spends all the time monkeying with the creative, when in fact, that's probably the least impactful thing. So when we go in to look at like our emails by clicks and subject line and stuff, it's actually the wrong place to start.
So, it's interesting because we've tried to evaluate and audit our own email newsletter. I've made no bones about the fact that I think ours it's too long, it has too much, but I don't have a solution. I don't have the fix because I don't have the data to say this is what it should look like instead. So if someone is sort of in this position and they're trying to evaluate what's working with their newsletter, where do they start to figure that out? Is that a whole different, episode, or are these metrics that they should be looking at?
No, that's exactly the heart of it, is that list, offer, creative hierarchy. The first thing you want to do, you want to rule things out, kind of like, doing a medical diagnosis or detective work. You want to rule things out until what you're left with, you can trust. So the first thing you'd want to do is put the clicks and stuff down, and look at the subscribers, right? Try to figure out, like, do we have the right people? So let's go ahead, and what I've done is I did some prep work before the show to anonymize our email database, because you just don't want to flash a whole bunch of people's emails on screen in a live stream. That's not very nice. And I'm going to put in just their IDs and just a count of how much email they have read. Right. And so what we're getting at here is, these are people we've sent 40 emails so far in 2021. That's what year this is, right? I don't remember anymore.
Yes.
Okay. And what we want to get a sense is, out of our list of like 22,000 people from this year, what percentage of that list is reading, right? So I'm going to probably break Tableau here by trying to visualize the entire thing. Oh, look, it didn't blow up on me. And so we can see here, just eyeballing it roughly, you got sort of that fat head. These are the folks who are like the super loyal folks. They'll, this person here, ID 1212. You've read 39 of the 40 emails. So whoever you are, ID 1212, thank you for your support. Start going down here into the suburbs and stuff. Once you get away from that, here is ID 202793. He's only read 5 of our emails this year. And then, you get down here into the 0. So ID 183502, what are you doing?
Well, so I have a question about this, Chris, because what you haven't told me is, when these people became subscribers. And so that person who's read 0 emails, maybe they subscribed today and haven't seen anything. And so that to me is something you would need to add context for.
That's a very good point. One of the things that's not in here, because it would require a database join, would be to get the when they signed up date, to figure out like how long have you been enrolled. But at the very least, I wonder if I can pivot this without blowing Tableau up. I can. At the very least, you've got sort of a power law curve. You've got your big head and you get the long tail. In this case, this actually isn't too bad. This is reasonably healthy. When you get to around sort of the middle of the pack and that people are still reading email of any kind, that's not bad. So that's that 50% mark. From my own newsletter, the Almost Timely newsletter, it's a much taller front head, but it's a much thinner tail. There's like a really 2 camps. There's the hardcore loyalists, and then there's everybody who almost never reads anything. So this is pretty healthy, all things considered. Which I'm really happy about, because it means that the list fundamentally is in a pretty healthy place.
So go ahead, John.
Oh, no, it's Chris.
Oh, it was Chris. Sorry, I can't tell you 2 apart anymore. I'm kidding. What's interesting is, like, what this doesn't tell me is that's great that they're reading it. But if we go back to that question that you asked me, is like, as the executive, this doesn't mean that we're selling anything, which at the end of the day is the thing that I'm responsible for, is the money. And so it's great that it's driving awareness, but does it do anything?
Right. And that's where, again, going back to our Google Analytics data and aggregate, we can say, like, yes, we're at least feeding the pipeline with it at a greater rate, substantially greater rate than other channels, right? So we know pretty well, like, this is our top converting channel. Now, could it be better? Absolutely. It can always be better. But at the very least, we know that the list seems to be reasonably healthy. And from our attribution modeling, we know that this is the top channel that's driving performance. The next thing we might want to do is get a sense of, okay, well, who are these people? Can we make any determination about that? And the answer there, unsurprisingly, is yes. What we want to do, though, is look at, by domain, who are those people, right? So of the opens we've gotten this year, the vast majority, by far, is coming from Gmail addresses, from Gmail accounts. And this is something that, again, for a lot of B2B marketers, they'd be like, oh my God, you guys are idiots. We're not idiots, I promise that, at least that much. One of the things that we do...
Depends on the day.
One of the things that we do that goes against the normal best practice is we allow people to sign up with their Gmail address or their Yahoo address to our email list. Why? Because the workforce has churned probably close to 50% in the last 18 months. And we care more about staying in touch with the person as they move job to job than necessarily knowing what company they're from. And so we're okay with this. There are other people who have the opposite perspective. But this tells me a couple of things. One, Gmail is by far the most important provider. So from an email marketing strategy perspective, our reputation with Gmail has to be stellar, right? If enough people hit that mark as spam button in Gmail, our email performance could drop off dramatically. To John's point earlier, when you think about algorithms that could change, the thing that could endanger our results so far would be people reporting us as spam. in Gmail. So that's one of the reasons why we have like big bright red unsubscribes, like because we don't want people taking the easier course of simply hitting mark as spam to make it go out of their inbox. We want them to use our really easy to find unsubscribe.
Well, it strikes me as well that companies that don't allow people to sign up with their Gmail or personal email address, that's a huge missed opportunity because think about people who are contractors. And so a lot of the workforce has transitioned into contract positions. A lot of companies have transitioned into only hiring contractors to save on costs. And so that means that a lot of people who want to get this information, they don't have a work email address that they would feel comfortable using because it's, a borrowed or they're contracting for this. It's not a permanent thing. So I would also say it's a missed opportunity if you're forcing people to sign up with a work email address because a lot of people won't be able to use it.
Exactly. Now, the other thing that stands out here is that you have some organizations, some individual companies and organizations that you're seeing a lot of people clicking on stuff because this is all by domain now. This is not by individual person. So we see our friends here at Talkwalker High, 316 clicks. Our friends over at Convince and Convert, 125 clicks. Hi. And if you spend time looking through this, you can get a sense of, who are these people? Where are they from? Like here's one, students.itu.edu. I don't know who that is. I don't know what school that is. But it's one of those things that might be worth investigating, like looking into the PII part, which we're not going to show, to see like, is that a teacher? Did we show up in somebody's course, and so on and so forth? That would be good things, particularly if you've got a book coming out. There's nothing quite so awesome as having a professor assign your textbook to a 100 level course and like 800 people buy it all at once. Okay, so we've looked so far to get a sense of, okay, what's happening with the list itself? Is the list fundamentally reasonably healthy? And I'd venture to say, based on the metrics we've looked at so far, that yeah, we're in a reasonably healthy state. Could it be better? Of course. But is it if it was much sharper drop off, I'd be worried that we've got a lot of dead weight on the list. We don't see a ton of dead weight here.
So Chris, this is all the metrics that you get out of the system itself, but there are other third-party tools that you can pay for that can give you information like people's titles or their roles, positions, companies, if that's not provided. And that's not what we're covering here, but I just wanted to make sort of the point that there are services out there that you can pay for that can help fill in those gaps.
Yep. If you want a secret tip, HubSpot does it for free. You just load your contacts into HubSpot CRM and it auto appends it for free, and then you address the API and extract the data, and then you don't have to pay 10 cents an email for that data append. Sorry, HubSpot.
You just made that sound super easy, but I'm sure it's not that straightforward.
It actually is. It is surprisingly easy. Okay, so that's the list. The one other thing that you should look at your list, and we're not going to do today because it's a royal pain in the butt to try and extract the data and visualize it without throwing PII everywhere, is your unsubscribe rate. Like how fast are you churning a list? How fast is your list departing? And for us, I ran the numbers. So we've had 22,000 people in aggregate on our list so far this year. About 4,000 have churned out, right? So we have our current subscriber base is around 18,000. So we've lost about 4,000 people along the way. When I look at them, they are predominantly corporate email addresses, right? So it's people changing jobs. It's not people saying, I never want to hear from you again. It is predominantly corporate addresses. So again, one of those other things where don't lock people into using a corporate email address, because the moment they change jobs, you've lost touch with them. So our list feels like it's in pretty good shape. So now the next step in our hierarchy is the offer. The offer for an email is the subject line, right? When it appears in your inbox, it is essentially a one-line ad, right? It's like a pay-per-click ad. You open up your Gmail inbox, your webmail or whatever, and you have all these emails with people and subject lines. Every single one of those things is an offer. And so the question then is, are your offers any good, right? What sort of is the pattern, if there is a pattern, that would tell you like, yeah, some of our offers were great, some of our offers weren't. So I've visualized here, just pretty simply, our subject lines, right, and then the number of reads on them. Now, there's two things that are skewing this slightly. The first thing that's skewing it is that this is an absolute count. This is not a percentage count. And the reason for that is because this is what I can get out of the system, and I didn't have time to do the computation. But the larger your list is over time, hopefully your list is growing, then the more recent emails should be doing better. But what we see here is that we changed our newsletter branding a few months ago to Inbox Insights from In the Headlights. And you can see scrolling down through that is doing pretty well. It is a little bit more attention getting. We also see things like our blatant sales pitch, right? That actually did pretty decently. We've got another blatant sales pitch a little further down here. We've got a survey. So all of these things are getting read. So these offers, one of the questions that we always ask ourselves is, are we sending too much promotional email? Based on the fact that we've got our blatant offers, let's resort this by subject here. We've got, I want to order this by subject only. There we go. And let's put a median line on here on read count. All of our blatant sales pitches are higher than the median. So I'd say it's actually probably safe to do not only promotional ones, but probably send a couple more.
Well, and it's something we've talked about just internally amongst the three of us, is that we don't send a lot of sales emails. And so within our newsletter, we might have, here's an advertisement for something, but it's not the main point of the email itself. It's something that's contained within the newsletter, but what the user is getting is a lot of other information about things that we're doing, things that we're reading, things that we think they should know about. I could probably count on one hand the number of actual sales pitch emails that we've sent so far this year. It's probably, I'm guessing, yeah, good. I have 3 fingers. So yeah, but that's it. We don't do a lot of it. And I think that we try to be, protective of our audience in that way, that's not what they signed up for. They didn't sign up for us to be constantly pitching them. So when we do, we want to let them know, hey, this is what we're doing. You can ignore this thing.
Exactly. So we can see, at least from the reads, the read count for now is a good way to benchmark like what kinds of things. Like here's another sales pitch of ours, again above the median. So generally speaking, it is fairly safe to say we could and probably should send more promotional sales pitches. So if you're subscribed to the Trust Insights newsletter list, you're getting a sales pitch soon. But the read number for now is sort of your proxy for how good is your offer. Because if nobody thinks the offer is any good, they're not going to read the email. Now, here's where this is going to change. Once Apple Mail rolls out in iOS 15 and Mac OS Monterey, anybody using Apple Mail is going to have a 100% open rate. Because what Apple is doing is saying we're going to protect user privacy by essentially prefetching the email as soon as it reaches a mailbox that's managed by Apple Mail. That can be Gmail, Hotmail, anything your Apple Mail client is tied to. It's going to prefetch to an iCloud server, and then it'll send that to the Apple Mail client when the user wants it. It will also prefetch all the links. It'll prefetch all the images. So this is going to do a few things. One, your open rate data for anybody using Apple Mail, which is 50% of the market, is going to be completely hosed. So you won't be able to use open rates anymore as a proxy for how interested somebody is. So the key takeaway here is do this kind of analysis that we're doing here with reads now, with your data now, before this privacy change takes place. Because after it takes place, your open rate is going to be all over the board, and none of them will be correct. And the second thing to think about is you'll have to do stuff like A/B testing with using clicks instead of opens, because it won't pre-click on everything. It will pre-fetch images in these emails to make sure there's nothing bad in them and block tracking pixels. So that's coming, I think, in the next 1 or 2 quarters. So very strongly advise you to do all of this analysis, extract your data now, take a snapshot, like download all the data you have in your system and archive it somewhere so that you have it as a historical reference before this privacy change takes place.
What do you mean by prefetch? Because you keep saying it prefetches. So basically, before the user even opens the email, the system, the server is pulling all the information to scan it to make sure it's valid, not spammy. So it's the system is basically saying, I've read it already, so you don't have to worry about it.
Exactly. It also means it's going to screw up things like, for example, best day to send an email, right? Because the open time will be the moment you send it, because Apple servers will open it immediately, right? You can send that email at 2 a.m. and it'll have like 100% open rate for Apple Mail users because the servers read it, and you won't know when the person actually read that thing. That's one of the reasons why it's so important that you have Google Analytics set up and good UTM tracking codes in your emails, because you'll still be able to see when the user clicks on a link from your newsletter and goes to your website, right? That'll be probably the most reliable way to do things like open time optimization, because you won't know from the opens themselves, because this for 50% of your list. And because Apple Mail can be used with multiple systems, including corporate email systems, it doesn't matter. It's not going to just be, .Mac or .iCloud addresses. It's anybody who's using Apple Mail for, Gmail, et cetera, and things like that. So that's the offer. That's the second thing to diagnose. You can use reads. Yes.
Question. So what we're talking about organic email, but that does raise a question for me that maybe we can answer in another forum. But what does that do for paid email? Does that drive up your ad costs? Does it, change your, return on ad spend metrics if you're getting that 100%, that prefetch information? If that's what the system is doing, like how much does that screw with your paid email?
It depends on how you're paying. So like if you're doing performance marketing where you pay only for a certain number of clicks or a certain number of leads, you'll be fine. If you're paying for opens and eyeballs, essentially your bills are going to explode, because it's like, oh, look, 100,000 people read your email this month. And, like actually 5 people did, but Apple read the rest of them. Or the vendor's going to have to say, yeah, we're going to pivot to some other metric, because you can't trust open rates on paid emails anymore. Again, the best thing that you can possibly do is use UTM tracking codes in Google Analytics, or the analytics software of your choice. It doesn't have to be Google's. Whatever you're using, use that with your emails. Put tracking codes in the URLs themselves, because that's something that is not going to be affected. And you will know then if people came to your website from an email. But yeah, paid emails, if you're paying for tonnage by the eyeballs, either somebody's going to say, the unscrupulous marketer is going to say like, oh yeah, we got an 86% open rate on this list. You're going to pay $10,000 to send to this list. And the honest ones will like, yeah, we have absolutely no idea what the open rate is.
Fair enough.
So list health. You look at the how many people are opening emails. Your offer is you're looking at the opens, and then the creative you can judge by the clicks, right? Because if your design is terrible and nobody can find anything, then it's pretty obvious that you're probably not going to get a whole bunch of people clicking on stuff. On the other hand, if you've got good design, or at least a manageable design, you'll get some clicks out of it. And if you're running an email newsletter that is informative, so it's not just your stuff all the time, then you're going to be sending clicks to a lot of different sources, not just one. So what we've got here, when we sort, this is interesting. Our click rate, or our clicks on our newsletters, is a little different than our reads, right? So the inbox insights, there's only 3 of those issues that are showing up for lots of clicks, and then it's a lot of the in the headlights stuff. So that that makes me scratch my head and go, I wonder what happened there. Now, again, depending on the provider, you may be able to get the the click ratios. Click ratios can be really, really tricky, particularly if they are dependent on the open rate. The software we're using uses a click ratio to send, I believe, so it's a little bit more reliable. So if I sort by that, again, still, we don't have a lot of inbox insights in here. We have a lot more in the headlights. And it's not like ancient. It's like 2020 stuff. So it's not like it's from a long time ago. So that makes me wonder. I wonder if our newer, more graphic heavy design is actually not as good as the kludgy old, even longer newsletter that we used to send. Like our newsletter used to be almost twice as long as it is now, and we're not getting the clicks or the click ratio from it. So I'm wondering if our creative needs some work.
I would vote for not a longer newsletter, but I don't have the data to back that up. No, my question though is, so when you're saying clicks, so this is anything within the newsletter that someone interacts with, and that includes the unsubscribe, correct?
That's correct.
So I think what we would need to do, because I'm like 99.9% confident that every single link in our newsletter is coded in some way that we can differentiate the links. So I would start there, is like, what are the things that people are clicking on? If, we're not getting as many clicks because people aren't unsubscribing, just as an example, hypothetically, then that's a good thing. But we would want to know what it is that people are clicking on within those newsletters that have the higher click rates.
Yep. And again, that's one of the things where, again, if you have access to the underlying data, I did not pull it here because that was like a 2-day project. You can actually pull out every single link in the database that's been clicked on and analyze, what kind of link it is and things like that. That is possible if you own the data itself. Yeah, we can certainly take a look at that. And you can do that somewhat anecdotally if you go into your email stats. You can take a look at, oops, I broke that. You can see like what are the most clicked on links within any given issue. You'll see different stories, our Slack group, etc. The unsubscribed. The unsubscribed actually didn't get too many in this issue. So you can definitely pull out individual link by link to see what's going on. But extracting that from every single issue you've ever sent would be a slightly more challenging thing. Really interesting comment, by the way, I think from David, saying that good email marketers use the lack of opens over a period of time as a signal to stop sending emails to those customers. That is a good point. If your marketing automation system has nurture campaigns that are contingent on email opens, you're going to be moving people through the pipeline that may not necessarily be qualified because Apple's opening the emails for you, and maybe sending false signals to your marketing your nurture campaign. So you will probably want to change your nurture campaigns to clicks as opposed to opens.
That's
another thing I was thinking about with that, with the previous report, though, is the click to send ratio. Because the list has been growing at a decent rate, so won't that bias the older stuff when the list size was smaller?
It would depend on the click rate. It would bias the click ratio, but not the click to send, because that should remain a percentage, right? So if you have more people clicking and you have more people on the list, that it should march in relative lockstep.
And those are, and that's the percentage rate. Okay, it's not raw.
It's, again, I sort of go back to, I would need to look at those individual issues, because it may be the issue where, Chris rolled out his new book, so everybody's clicking to download it. Or it may be the issue where we're replaying, one of our webinars or talks or something like that. So I think, there's a lot of dependencies, and, those are things that just, if you're looking at all of the data together, you want to make sure that you're digging into each of those individual components. Just making decisions on those Tableau charts isn't good enough.
Exactly. One other thing I can't emphasize enough, the UTM tracking codes are your friend. So I'm going to change this in Google Analytics here, away from default channel grouping into campaign. And this will sort of rearrange the funnel. And now you can see if you're using UTM tracking codes well, you can see the individual issues. So like we date we change our tracking codes every single issue of all of our emails to see what issue it is. So here's Inbox Insights, right? This is the August 18th issue. Here's the Almost Timely newsletter. This is the August 22nd newsletter. So you can go in and see what individual issues of your email newsletter are nudging people through different stages in the funnel. And from a content perspective, that's super powerful to be able to say, like, oh, this is, this issue really did a lot for us, or yeah, that issue really, didn't really help us out very much. So I would say that is a super important thing to do, is to make sure those UTM tracking codes are set up properly.
Well, and for us, it's helpful because we made the decision about 2 months ago to change who was authoring the cold open. And so the content itself has changed quite significantly. There's still the insider data insights. If you subscribe, you can get those pieces, but the cold open has changed. And so as the person who's writing it, I would want to know, is the content that I'm writing then detrimental to the subscriber base, and they're subscribing at a faster rate? It's not doing as much as it was when Chris was writing it, for example. And so we would have to say, okay, so Katie can't write that anymore. Chris has to take over writing it again. Just no, but as an example, if I only have us as an example, in another company, it might be a different case where it's like, we're only ever going to publish content in our newsletter about blue walls, but people really want pink walls, or whatever the thing is. Like, it doesn't matter. What you need to do is look and say, like, is it working? And the best way to do that, Chris, to your point, is to make sure every single issue has those tracking codes so that you can differentiate it when you're looking at it, in any one of the numerous charts that you've shown.
Exactly. So we covered a lot of ground today, but the fundamentals, Google Analytics or the web analytics software of your choice, should be sort of the gold standard measurement of the performance of your email, because it's people who've gone from the email to your property. And so you can see those individuals who've made that transition. That's going to have, I will tell you in advance, that's going to have some uncomfortable moments, because it's always going to be less than the number of clicks that your email marketing software reports. But with that, you can then start doing funnel visualization stuff right within Google Analytics or in Data Studio or whatever you want for that. So make sure that you're using those tracking codes, please. When it comes to diagnosing your email list for what's wrong, start with the list, then look at the offer, then look at the creative. Please do not assume the creative is a problem from the get-go and start rearranging the deck furniture on the Titanic, as it were. And now, today is what, September 2nd, right? It is a great day to get rid of anything that is reliant on open rate, because upcoming privacy changes are going to cause all kinds of heartache for marketers as new privacy regulations and things roll out and new privacy technologies roll out. And finally, if you're using email marketing software that does not allow you to export your data, it's time to change vendors.
It strikes me as interesting. There's so many metrics that you can look at with your email, and it always brings me back to the so what. So you had asked me at the top of the show, like, what metrics do I care about? And as we're going through it, I'm thinking, like, yeah, some of these metrics are nice to know, but can I make a decision with it? Can I make a change with it? And so the open rate, yeah, it's good to know, but what am I going to do with that? Can I affect that? The answer is yes, but is that a priority for me, or do I care more about other things? And so I think that, as you're going through your email marketing metrics, going back to those persona statements of, as a CEO, I want to understand if my email newsletter is leading to leads in the pipeline so that I can do more of it.
Exactly. And I would say, when we go back to our attribution model, the answer to there is email's probably okay for right now. We need to give some love to something else to get some more balance, some more diversity in our marketing mix, because to the point at the very top of the show, we are a little on the heavy side, a lot on the heavy side on one channel. And it is a risk that we definitely want to diversify. So I would say for us, email is healthy enough that we can divert some focus and resources to. We don't have to be all in on email all the time. If your attribution models, however, show that you've like 0.1% of your traffic or conversions from email, it might be time to move some resources to dig into that, particularly if you're seeing diminishing returns on other channels.
Agreed.
All
so
right.
John,
Well,
you're going to do all of these things with your email newsletter now, right?
Yeah, right. It'll be huge on email. I had a couple questions come in via text. John Blue and Jim B were both asking about open rates, and you totally nailed those. But there was one question asking just about list size. Is there any minimum for you as far as how big your list is, where you below a certain point, you don't really care about the stats? Like, is there a number where you need to hit before everything starts to get statistically relevant?
The main thing with list is not the size of it, but how fast it's growing or not growing, right? So a list that is flat or slightly declining all the time is a problem, right? It means that you're not getting any natural growth. And one of the things that's actually can be a content problem, right? If your email isn't good enough to get somebody to forward it to a friend, like, oh, you should read this, and get people to sign up that way, you've got a growth problem. You probably got a content problem. Your content's probably not very good. And so I would be looking more at growth rate over time than I would be list size. I mean, yeah, if you have 10 people on your list, you probably don't need a whole lot of fancy analytics. Like, you could literally ask all 10 people, hey, how's it going? But for the most part, the growth numbers are really important.
Good deal. There was one question too about in Gmail, and this is something I know Seth Godin still, complains to this day about the fact that they had that transition where promotional emails went into its own tab. Is there anything new on the front of trying to stay off that tab?
That comes down to the same thing you see people saying all the time, which is add us to your address book or whatever, so that gets moved to the inbox. That still works. There are Google, no surprise, has huge numbers of behavioral metrics at its disposal to be able to say, like, okay, we see people are doing X, right? And so if everybody leaves your email unread in their inboxes, probably not a great email. If people are hitting mark as spam on your email, that's a really negative signal that you need to fix immediately, because it's a huge problem. One of the things that you should definitely be doing, if you're not already, is using Gmail's Postmaster Tools, right? Postmaster Tools is a free service from Gmail, and it tells you basically what Google is seeing, like how many people reported your email as spam, right? So our rate here is 0.4 at its highest. So this is really healthy. Google sort of okay limit is 1%. Google's, we're going to just outright block you as 5%. So they're saying, like, if you get above 5%, we're gonna whoop you. And so over the last 120 days, our rates are very, very good. There's 7 different areas to look at in here, and this is probably its own show to dig into what each of all these different buttons and features do. But you definitely want to be looking at stuff like your reputation. Like, this is our domain's reputation, Trust Insights, and it shows that we have a good reputation. That reputation controls which tab you end up in, right? Mm-hmm. So if your reputation is crap, you can end up in all sorts of suburbs you don't want to be in. The same is true for all these different things. They're all just measures that Google looks at, but you've got to stay out of the danger zones. And again, if you're an email marketer and you've done the analysis on your list, like we were showing, where we saw all those Gmail addresses, Postmaster Tools is a place we have to be looking at least once a month to go, what did we do last month? Oh, something went wrong there. You got to do it.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, I guess then we will head on out and we'll talk to folks next week. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching today. Be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you're watching it. For more resources and to learn more, check out the Trust Insights podcast at trustinsights.ai/TI podcast and a weekly email newsletter at trustinsights.ai/newsletter. Got questions about what you saw in today's episode? Join our free Analytics for Marketers Slack group at trustinsights.ai/analytics for marketers. See you next time.